When I arrived at the wedding hall, my only son laughed. Your name isn't on the list. Eliza, calm but with an undercurrent of pain, the gift was a set of antique silver cufflinks, my late husband's. I'd kept them wrapped in velvet for 20 years, waiting for the right moment. For my son's wedding day. It's funny, isn't it? The things we save. We assign them a future, a purpose, a memory yet to be made. We believe they will be held by hands that cherish them, that understand their weight. We believe the story they carry will continue. That's what a mother believes. It's what I believed, right up until the moment my story was supposed to begin, and I was told I wasn't in it. The laughter is what I remember most. Not loud or cruel, but worse. It was a polite, dismissive little chuckle. The kind you give a stranger who has made a silly mistake. I was standing outside a grand ballroom in Atlanta, the kind with towering floral arrangements and the low hum of expensive champagne glasses clinking. I'd driven 6 hours from Charleston, my heart aflutter with a foolish, maternal pride for my only son, Michael. A wedding I had only learned about from a cousin's social media post. When I gave my name to the wedding planner, a young woman with a clipboard and a tight smile, my son, appeared. Not with a hug, but with that chillingly polite expression. "I'm sorry, who?" he asked, then turned to the planner. "Your name isn't on the list," he said, looking past me as if I were a ghost. And then he laughed that quiet, soul-crushing laugh. His new bride, Jessica, a woman half my age, simply watched from a distance, her expression unreadable. In that one moment, I wasn't his mother anymore. I was an error, an uninvited guest at the life I had built. 1. The long drive home. Scene: interior of a car, driving at night on a lonely highway. Rain streaks across the windshield. The wrapped gift sits on the passenger seat. Eliza, Vio. The 6-hour drive back to South Carolina felt like an eternity. Each mile marker was a tick of a clock rewinding my life, replaying every sacrifice, every late night, every penny saved. My husband, Robert, passed 2 decades ago. He was a good man, a practical man. He left me with our dream home and a small but stable portfolio. "This is for your future, Eliza," he'd said. "For you and Michael." But a child's future always feels more urgent than your own. Michael was brilliant, ambitious. When he got into Duke for his business degree, the tuition was staggering. I never hesitated. I sold our home, the one Robert and I had built, with its sprawling garden and the oak tree we'd planted together. I moved into a small condo, the kind of place you downsize to when you're ready for a quiet life. But my life wasn't quiet. It was invested. Every dollar from that house, every cent from my savings, went into his education and then into his dream. He had an idea for a tech startup, a logistics software that he said would revolutionize the shipping industry. He had the vision, but no capital. Banks wouldn't look at a 22-year-old with nothing but a concept. So I became his first and only investor. I took out loans against my own credit. I emptied Robert's portfolio. I wasn't just his mother. I was his co-founder in everything but name. I managed the books in those early years, working from my tiny dining table. I meticulously documented every single transaction, every investor pitch I helped him write, every dollar that flowed in and out. I kept it all in a worn, leather-bound ledger, a habit my father, an accountant, had taught me. "Paper never forgets, Eliza," he used to say. For years, it was our shared secret, our project. His success was my success. And he did succeed, beyond our wildest dreams. He moved the company to Atlanta, became the polished CEO I saw in business magazines. Our weekly calls became monthly, then dwindled to texts on birthdays and holidays. I told myself he was busy. I told myself he was building the empire we had started together. The distance, the silence, I rationalized it all. A mother's love is a powerful anesthetic. It numbs you to the truth, even when it's staring you right in the face. That night, driving through the rain, the anesthesia wore off. The public humiliation at the wedding wasn't just a snub. It felt strategic. It was the final, clean cut of a surgeon exorcising something unwanted. Me. 2. The paper trail begins. Scene: Eliza's small, tidy condo in Charleston. It's early morning. She opens an old, fireproof safe and pulls out a dusty box and a thick, leather ledger. Eliza, view back in the sterile quiet of my condo, grief gave way to a cold, unfamiliar resolve. Despair is a luxury, but clarity is a weapon. I wasn't just heartbroken. I was confused. How could the boy I raised, the man whose dreams I funded, erase me so completely? It didn't make sense. And when things don't make sense, you go back to the beginning. For me, the beginning was in that fireproof safe. I pulled out the old leather ledger. Its pages were filled with my neat, careful handwriting, a decade-old history of loans, wire transfers, and shareholder agreements. Alongside it was a box of incorporation documents for Logie Corp., the company that was now worth millions. I'd kept them as mementos, proud relics of our shared history. Now I looked at them with new eyes. I wasn't looking for memories. I was looking for an explanation. And then I found it. Tucked inside a folder labeled Founding Shareholder Amendments was a document I had never seen before. It was a stock transfer agreement, dated 5 years prior. It was short, brutally efficient. It stated that I, Eliza Catherine Wallace, relinquish my 40% founding stake in Logie Corp., my seed money, my loans, my sweat equity, to Michael for the symbolic sum of $1. My heart stopped. This document effectively wrote me out of the company's history and its future. It turned my investment into a gift, my partnership into a memory he could choose to forget. But the most chilling part, the detail that made the blood run cold in my veins, was the signature at the bottom. It was my name in my cursive. But it wasn't my hand. It was a forgery. A careful, practiced imitation, but a lie nonetheless. The wedding, the laughter, the cold dismissal, it all clicked into place. This wasn't a sudden act of cruelty. This was the final move in a long, silent, and meticulously planned corporate coup. He hadn't just pushed me away, he had stolen my legacy. This is a pattern seen in many family disputes, where the conflict is less about money itself and more about deep-seated issues like a desire for recognition or the erasure of one's contributions. My son had used my trust as a weapon, leveraging legal instruments to commit a form of financial abuse that is tragically common, especially against older family members. The Department of Justice defines financial exploitation as the misuse of a fiduciary duty, such as the relationship between a parent and child, to gain control over an elder's assets. And there it was in black and white. My erasure, signed with a fraudulent flourish of my own name. 3. An unlikely ally. Scene: a small, cluttered legal aid office. Eliza is sitting across from Anna, a sharp, empathetic lawyer in her late 20s. Eliza, though I knew I couldn't fight a multi-million-dollar corporation and its CEO on my own. I didn't have the money for a high-powered law firm in Atlanta. My search led me to a legal aid center in Charleston and to a young lawyer named Anna. She was barely older than Michael's new wife, with bright, intelligent eyes that held no pity, only focus. I expected her to see a confused old woman. Instead, she saw a client. I laid everything out on her small desk, the ledger, the bank statements, and the forged document. I told her the whole story, my voice never wavering. I kept the emotion out of it. This wasn't about a mother's broken heart anymore. This was about a business deal gone wrong. Anna listened, her fingers steepled, her gaze fixed on the papers. She turned the pages of my ledger, her expression shifting from curiosity to quiet intensity. "He weaponized your trust, Eliza," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "People do this more often than you'd think, especially with the power of attorney or, in this case, the implicit trust of a parent. They count on the fact that family won't fight back." She explained that what Michael had done wasn't just a family betrayal. It was financial fraud and potentially elder financial abuse, a serious offense where a person in a position of trust misappropriates an elder's property. Cases like these are notoriously difficult because the perpetrator often appears to have been a loyal and loving family member, making the deception harder to prove. But Anna saw what I saw. Hope. "The forgery is your smoking gun," she said, tapping the document. "But it's your word against his. We need more. We need to build a fortress of evidence around this, so solid that he can't find a single crack." She pointed to the ledger. "This is our foundation. Your meticulous records are everything." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of power. It wasn't the loud, arrogant power of my son's world, but something quieter, stronger. It was the power of the truth, written in ink, on paper that never forgets. Anna agreed to take my case pro bono, driven by the sheer injustice of it all. Our fight wouldn't be waged with anger or public accusations. It would be a quiet war, fought with paper, data, and the unshakable facts of the past. 4. The digital breadcrumbs. Scene: a montage of Eliza and Anna working late in the office, surrounded by documents. They're on laptops, scrolling through old emails and digital files. A digital forensics expert joins them. "Eliza, VOR investigation became a painstaking archaeological dig into the past decade of my life." Anna brought in a digital forensics expert, a young man named Ben who could pull stories from the ghosts of old hard drives. "We started with my old desktop computer, the one I'd used for all of Logicorp's early bookkeeping. It sat collecting dust in my spare bedroom, an obsolete machine I hadn't had the heart to throw away. Ben called it a digital time capsule. He recovered emails I'd forgotten I'd ever written. Emails to Michael with detailed financial projections, strategy suggestions, and introductions to my own business contacts. We found early drafts of the company's business plan, filled with my handwritten notes in the margins that were later typed, verbatim, into the final version. Each file had a digital fingerprint, a timestamp, metadata that showed my deep, foundational involvement long before Michael hired his first official employee. We were building a narrative piece by digital piece that proved I was not just a benefactor. I was a builder. The real breakthrough came from Michael's side. Anna filed a motion for discovery, a legal request for documents from Logicorp. His lawyers sent back a mountain of paperwork, likely assuming we'd drown in it. But Anna was methodical. We spent weeks poring over every page, every email chain. Tucked deep within the files was an email from Michael to his corporate lawyer, dated the week of the forgery. The subject line was cleaning up founding structure. In it, he wrote, "Need to formalize my mother's early contribution as a gift to simplify the cap table before the next funding round. She won't object." It was a small sentence, buried in corporate jargon, but it was everything. It was intent. It showed that he knew my contribution was foundational, not a gift, and that he was actively taking steps to reclassify it without my consent. It corroborated our timeline perfectly. Then Ben found the clincher. The forged document had been created and signed digitally on a computer in Logicorp's Atlanta office, at a time my own travel records and credit card statements proved I was at home in Charleston. He had forged my signature and then printed the document for the files. He had been so confident, so arrogant, that he'd left a trail of digital breadcrumbs leading right back to his desk. The fight was no longer about a mother's love versus a son's ambition. It was about hard, verifiable data. It was about the truth, and we finally had enough of it to fight back. 5. The quiet checkmate. Scene: a sterile, modern boardroom. Michael and his team of lawyers are on one side of a long table. Eliza and Anna are on the other. Eliza is calm, composed. Eliza, via the climax of our story, wasn't a dramatic courtroom battle. Michael's lawyers would have torn me apart on the stand, painting me as a bitter, forgetful old woman trying to cash in on her son's success. It's a common tactic in inheritance disputes to challenge the mental competency or motives of the person left out. Anna knew this. She said our victory wouldn't come from a jury. It would come from a moment of undeniable, irrefutable proof. Our stage was a pretrial deposition, a quiet, sterile boardroom high in an Atlanta skyscraper. Michael was there, looking polished and confident in a tailored suit. He barely made eye contact with me. His lawyers were smug, assured. They started the proceedings, their questions designed to paint me as emotionally distraught and financially naive. I answered calmly, sticking to the facts, just as Anna had coached me. Then it was our turn. Anna didn't make a grand speech. She simply walked to the head of the table and placed a single file in front of Michael's lead attorney. Inside was a concise, damning report. It contained the original stock transfer agreement with my forged signature. Next to it, a forensic analysis report confirming it wasn't my handwriting. It had the printout of the email to his lawyer about cleaning up the founding structure. It had the metadata report showing the document was created on his computer in Atlanta on a day I was 300 miles away. And finally, it had copies of a dozen emails from the company's first year, showing my direct involvement in strategic and financial operations. Anna, speaking softly but clearly.
Anna, speaking softly but clearly, we have also filed an emergency motion to freeze all company assets pending the outcome of this fraud investigation, effective immediately. Logi Corp is scheduled to close a major merger next week, I believe. That will no longer be possible until this matter is resolved. Eliza, Vio, a heavy silence fell over the room. I watched Michael's face. The polite, confident mask shattered. His eyes darted from the papers to his lawyer, then finally to me. For the first time, he saw me. Not his mother, not an inconvenience, but the co-founder he had tried to erase. The person who held the power to bring his entire empire to a halt. The blood drained from his face. There was no shouting, no dramatic outburst. It was a quiet checkmate. The power of a paper trail is absolute. He had built a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and we had just calmly, quietly, pulled out the bottom card. 6. Legacy restored. Scene. Eliza is in her garden, the one in her small condo complex. It's vibrant and peaceful. She's planting new flowers. She looks content. Eliza, Vio Michael's lawyers settled within 48 hours. They couldn't risk the merger failing or the public scandal of a fraud trial. The settlement was substantial. It wasn't just about the money, though it was more than enough to ensure I would be secure for the rest of my life. It was about the terms. The settlement required a formal, legal acknowledgement of my role as a founding investor in Logi Corp. My name was officially restored to the company's history. My story could no longer be erased. I never spoke to Michael again. Part of the settlement included a non-disclosure agreement, but silence was a price I was willing to pay for justice. Some might see that as an unhappy ending. A mother and son, estranged forever. And yes, a part of my heart will always grieve for the boy I raised and the man I thought he would become. Family conflicts over inheritance can permanently sever relationships, often because they are about so much more than just assets. My son's actions were a profound betrayal that no amount of money could ever truly mend. The case of Brooke Astor, whose son was criminally convicted for mismanaging her finances, shows just how deep these betrayals can run. But my story isn't about him anymore. It's about me. I didn't get my son back, but I got myself back. I bought a small house near the coast, with a garden big enough to get my hands dirty in. I established a foundation in my late husband's name, providing seed funding for young entrepreneurs in Charleston, with contracts reviewed by a very sharp, very dedicated lawyer. I am no longer the silent partner, the forgotten mother, the name not on the list. My name is on the front door of my own home. It's on the charter of a foundation that does good work. It's back where it belongs in the history of a company I helped build. Justice, I've learned, doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's a quiet click of a safe opening. It's the rustle of old papers that refuse to be forgotten. It's the calm, steady voice of a woman who decided that her story was worth fighting for. And my story, I promise you, is far from over. Final shot. A close-up of the Foundation's charter hanging on a wall. Eliza's name is clearly visible as founding director. The camera slowly pulls back to show Eliza smiling, looking out a window at her garden. The soft, ambient music returns and swells slightly before fading to black.